Alright guys, so as you know, we have finished up our use of color pencils. We learned a lot of skills, we learned about value, we learned about blending, gradients, using multiple colors, different pressures, and now we're going to continue our skills and we're going to work with graphite pencils. Now, the difference between graphite pencils and color pencils is one, the hue or the color. So graphite, of course, you're only able to achieve different shades of gray. So you can go light gray, medium gray, of course, then really dark. And then color pencils, obviously, you have a wide variety of colors. The main difference also is how the pencil is made. So color pencils, as you may have remembered from our last presentation, if you will, are made of wax. And so when you use wax to blend and color with, it's a very different experience than graphite. So graphite is a lot softer. It is a lot easier to blend, and so as we segue from color pencils to graphite pencils, you will start to experience a little bit easier of a time achieving those gradients, achieving those blends, achieving those different values in your own artwork. So looking at here, as you see there, I have an example showing you of the different types of pencils that are available to use when creating something with graphite pencils. And so right here, if you can see the HB. So HB is your typical pencil, one that you would use on a regular day basis, those yellow pencils. In fact, I am going to give you guys one to add to your art kit. And when you move to the left, B stands for soft or black. And so here, as you see, it gets darker and darker and darker. And then when you move to the right, H stands for firm or hard, and it gets lighter and lighter and lighter. And so when you use a variety of different pencils, you're able to achieve darker or lighter values. When you're using graphite pencils, the really nice thing that you're going to be able to do is use blending materials to achieve those different gradients, those different blends. You may have noticed with the color pencils you were unable to really blend, and the only way that you were able to blend was using different pressures. So now with graphite pencils, you're going to continue using different pressures, but you're also going to be able to use different materials to help blend. So for our unit, we're going to be using tissue, and we're going to be using Q-tips. Now, traditionally, people would use like a blending stump, and unfortunately, we do not have the resources to get everybody a blending stump. So if you have one at home, or if you're at the art store and you have the means of picking one up, highly recommended. And then, of course, everybody's also going to get a kneaded eraser, and I will show you guys here in just a sec what a kneaded eraser does. So, the use of graphite pencils and the use of different blending materials, you're able to achieve some very striking, well-did art through the use, again, of graphite pencils. So, let's go ahead and get started. Alright guys, so we have our graphite pencils that I'm going to be giving you. I'm going to give you guys 3 different pencils. Again, one is going to be the HB pencil, one is going to be the 4B pencil, and the other is going to be a 2H pencil. Now, remember, from our scale, H stands for firm or hard, and B stands for black or soft. And then HB is going to be right in the center, and that's essentially a traditional pencil that you would use regularly. Now, again, when you're looking at pencils, you probably will come across many different types of pencils, all in different brands, different colors and whatnot, but nonetheless, they are all the same. The way to tell what pencil it is, though, right here on the side, let's see if we can get that in focus, it'll say, let's see, HB. So right there, it reads HB. Our other pencils will say, 2H, and then you also have 4B. Okay, so if you have your pencils and you're having a hard time identifying which one's which, just look towards the end and you will be able to see what pencil you have. Okay, some of you will be getting different like colored pencils, or at least styles of pencil, but nonetheless, as long as it says the 2H, 4B, or HB, they are all essentially the same. So again, looking at our scale here, our HB pencil is kind of right there in the middle. Okay, our 2H pencil is going to be a couple steps lighter, and then our 4B pencil is going to be a few steps darker. Okay, so as you can imagine, with the skills that we've learned so far in terms of value, when we are creating something, remember our goal is to have all shades of the value, darkest to lightest, to replicate something that looks as if it is three-dimensional. So again, we're going to achieve that by using different types of pencils to either go lighter or darker. As you could imagine, the same principle applies when we talk about pressure, pressing harder or lighter to achieve a darker or lighter value. When you do that particular method with these types of pencils, as you can imagine again, some will appear lighter, like the 2H, or some will appear darker, no matter how hard or light you press with either or. So, these pencils are going to be added to your kit, and then I'm also going to give you a few blending tools, as I mentioned before. In this little bag, I'm going to give you guys a few sheets of tissue paper. I'm going to give you a couple Q-tips, and then, of course, I'm going to give you guys a kneaded eraser. So the tissue paper and the Q-tips are used to blend the graphite when it's already on the page. And again, I'm going to show you guys an example here in just a sec. You could also do the same with your tissue paper. It just depends on the surface area and how much blending you need to do. Q-tips are meant for tighter spaces, and then of course tissue paper is meant for larger spaces or bigger areas that you're trying to blend together. A kneaded eraser, however, is meant to take away some value. So if you were shading your life away and it got a little too dark, but of course you don't want to erase the entire thing, you can use a kneaded eraser and it will take away a small part of that value and allow you to continue blending or shading on whatever you're working on. So again, I will show you how to use this here right now. So once you get all your materials from me, you are going to start practicing with these basic concepts that we worked with using color pencils. The skill in terms of blending, shading, understanding value scales, everybody should already 100% understand. If you are lost or confused on this, please let me know so I can get you caught up to speed. But essentially this concept, how hard you press, how light you press with the pencils, is the exact same thing as when we use colored pencils. So on the first side of this sheet here, there are 3 sections, and each section I want you to practice using each pencil. Now consider this something like a warm-up so we can kind of understand and gain skill using each specific pencil and understand again what each one does, how dark each one gets, is it easier or is it more difficult to blend, who knows. So starting off with our 2H pencil, because this is going to be the lightest, you're going to first do a value scale going from the darkest that this pencil can achieve to the lightest this pencil can achieve. So remember, as you move forward to each square, you're going to want to press lighter and lighter, and eventually your last square is going to be the lightest you possibly can achieve with this 2H pencil. So next, again, you're going to do a blended value scale. So remember, you're going to start with your heavy pressure, and as you're moving, you're gradually letting up on your pencil so that you start with the darkest value that you could possibly achieve with this pencil, and you are gradually moving towards the end, ending with the lightest value that you could achieve with this pencil. And then of course we're going to work on blending this sphere. So remember here, darkest on the outer, and gradually getting lighter as you approach the center or the left. So right now would be a good time to maybe practice with our blending material. So I'm going to use a Q-tip. So remember, the Q-tip is typically used for tighter spaces. And so here, in some of the areas, it's looking a little patchy, if you will. So here I have a bunch of swirls. So I can start with taking my Q-tip, and I can kind of rub on top of this lighter area, and you will see that the graphite starts to blend in with itself. Now, the thing that you have to be very cautious about is that when you are working on this, your Q-tip is going to have some graphite now left over. So if you start here in the darker area and you work your way to the lighter area, all of that dark value is going to be transferred over to the light area. So if you're trying to blend this light area together, you don't want to use a dirty side of the Q-tip. You maybe want to flip over to the clean side and then kind of just continue on with your blending. Voila. Now, when you do blend, sometimes the values that you are achieving at the edge get lighter because, of course, you've taken that graphite and you've kind of distributed it throughout your area or your space. So right before you end, you're going to want to go back in and kind of reinsert those darker values with your pencil before you continue and move on. So, before we move forward, let's talk about the kneaded eraser. So, the kneaded eraser is a very interesting tool. You are able to knead it, hence the name kneaded eraser. And the goal here is that you can kind of bend and mold it into any form or shape that you want. And then, of course, when you have a space that is either too light or too dark, then you can take your kneaded eraser and you can essentially just drag it across your workspace. So let's say, for example, if I was blending and I got too much over here on the outer edge and now it's too dark. So what I can do is I can take my kneaded eraser and I can go ahead and just drag it across the areas that needed to be light again. And magically, it only takes off a small portion that you needed to erase. When you do get some graphite on your kneaded eraser, you are going to want to make sure that you re-knead your eraser so that graphite is kind of redistributed back into the eraser. And then, of course, you're able to use it again. So, with that said, this was with 2H. You're going to work on doing the same practice with your HB pencil and your 4B pencil. Creating value scales, blended value scales, and then working on the sphere. Now again, remember, as you're working through, don't be afraid to start using and working with your blending materials along with your kneaded eraser to lighten up some of those values if you've gone too dark. When you're finished with the front, there is a backside to continue practicing with blending. And again, on this side especially, you're encouraged to use your Q-tips and use your kneaded eraser to achieve the values that you're looking for. So as you're working on this, if you have any questions, please let me know. Other than that, good luck. Okay, just kidding, I actually forgot. So I'm going to do one of these real quick just to give you an example of what it's like to use multiple pencils along with all of your blending materials so that you could achieve the best possible value that you can when working with geometric shapes or giving form to an object that you're trying to create on a piece of paper. So here, as we're working on this, the first thing that I would suggest doing, obviously you're going to pick whichever one you want to work on first, and we're going to do this one just because I like this curvature, and it's a little bit, it kind of really hits the example here with using multiple pencils. Now, although that this is not as dark as it possibly can be, because essentially we're going for our darkest value, which would be closest to black, you're going to interpret this shadow as if, that you, to the darkest that you possibly can get it, okay? So when you're trying to replicate these values to give this particular shape form, which again, giving something form means that you're giving it a three-dimensional effect on this two-dimensional surface by the use of value. And again, we're achieving value this time through different pencils that can achieve a darker or lighter value. We're also blending in the idea of pressing harder or lighter to achieve a lighter or darker value with each pencil. So here, with my lightest pencil, I'm going to start with my 2H pencil so that we can just start with our lightest values. So what I usually like to do when I'm using multiple pencils is I like to just recreate this exact value exactly as I see it. So I see in the center, kind of right here, is where my darkest value is. So I'm going to do just that. I'm going to make sure that my darkest value is achieved with this 2H pencil. Again, the 2H pencil is the lightest pencil that I have. And I'm going to start building up this value with my 2H pencil to begin with. Now here with the 2H pencil, again, when I'm looking and observing this, when I get kind of towards the end over here, it gets gradually lighter. So when I'm working with this pencil, I want to do the same. So I start in the center where that darkest value is, and then I'm gradually getting lighter until I get to the edge, which again is the lightest value that you could achieve. Coming back over here, again, the darkest value, and then working my way back to yet again the lightest value. So as I'm working on this, what I found, and I'm hoping that you found as well, that when you're playing with these different values and these different pressures, you have to intentionally think about how light things need to be, and you need to keep telling yourself that it needs to be lighter, it needs to be lighter, it needs to be lighter. You need to ask yourself, how do I achieve it to be as light as it possibly can be, and what does that look like when I'm using the pencil? So as you've learned by now, it looks like just pressing significantly lighter to achieve this value. I like to think of it as if I was driving and I was pressing on the brake, and I needed to press so light on the brake just because I just need to slow down just a little bit, and that's how I'm achieving these lighter values. So the top doesn't really have much value, so maybe I'll just put a very, 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 very light value down with my 2H pencil, because remember again, the 2H pencil is the lightest pencil that you could possibly use. And then we have some shadows down over here. So again, I just want to use the 2H pencil with everything just to kind of get my base. Because remember, with anything, you could always add, but it becomes incredibly difficult to take away. Now, thankfully, with graphite pencils, we have tools to take away, making it not as difficult as it would have been with color pencils. The use of color pencils taking away value is incredibly difficult because the material is made of wax. So since graphite is a lot softer material, as you could imagine, it erases very easily. So, Again, once I've achieved the values that I'm looking for with my 2H pencil, looking pretty close, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to come back in with my HB pencil, which again is a little bit softer, so I could achieve darker values. And I'm just going to go right here in the center, and I'm just going to push this center value as dark as I can go with this HB pencil. Now, as I approach these lighter areas, remember I'm playing with my different pressures, and I'm just pressing very, very, very light so that, again, I can blend these darker values with those lighter values. Now, I've already achieved my lightest value here, so obviously I'm not going to use my HB pencil, and I'm not going to go any further than I need to again, achieve these lighter values. When doing this, remember, circular motion is honestly the key to success. When you have harder lines, like right here, this really dark value next to this light value, and if you're having a hard time blending it, remember, if you use the circular motion and you start with a very, very, very light pressure, you will eventually start to see that that value will start to just blend in and essentially disappear. So, once you have achieved the value that you're looking for, and here, this is starting to bother me a little bit, so what I can do is I can take my kneaded eraser, and I can go ahead and go in there and just drag my pencil, or excuse me, my kneaded eraser, very lightly on the top of the area that got a little too dark, and you'll start to see that it'll pull it up gradually, and I'm just kind of dabbing it. Voila. The magic of a kneaded eraser. So now that's my HB pencil. I'm going to go back in with my HB pencil and maybe make the shadows darker. As you start to build up skill with graphite pencil and understand what the pencils do and how they work, you can essentially jump right away to your darkest pencil if you know that this is going to be the darkest value that it needs to achieve a shadow. But for practice sake, I want you to again start with all the pencils first and then gradually work your way up to the skill of identifying what needs to be what and what pencil you need to use to achieve whatever value you're looking at. So here, once I've done that, my last pencil is my 4B pencil. And again, I'm going to go into these values that are the darkest, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to kind of put those darkest values where they need to be, and then I'll blend them out just using different pressures. Voila. Here again, I'll go in these corners, make them as dark as they possibly can be. Voila. Shadows and values achieved. So now I did not have to use my blending materials because of course my pencil skills I've been working on for a very long time. But let's say I'm coming in and I'm not a fan of like these pencil marks at the top that I've made. I'm going to take, remember, because since this is the lightest value, I'm going to take a clean side of my Q-tip, and I'm just going to go in, and I'm just going to kind of smooth and blend it out. Okay. Again, if you need to come over here and then do the same thing to kind of just smooth things out and blend them, you definitely can. And you got to remember, you got to be light and gentle with this kind of stuff, or else it'll go and blend together way too fast. And that is honestly the only downfall when using graphite, is that it will blend very quickly. Remember, if there's any areas that got a little too dark, you can take your kneaded eraser to lighten them up. But I think I'm pretty happy with what I've achieved here so far. So again, use this opportunity to practice using multiple pencils with all of your blending materials, so that again you can achieve the best form that you possibly accomplish with your skill. So again, if you're having troubles with this, please let me know. I know that it may look a lot easier when I'm doing it, but trust me, there are just a few little tips that I can give you that will help you be the best artist you possibly can be. So again, thank you very much, and good luck.